Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk about all things health and healing from a holistic perspective. And today we're going to be talking about the liver, specifically the 8 signs that you have a toxic liver. Now, here's why this conversation is so important, because the liver is known as the Master Detoxification organ. Everybody knows that the liver is there to detox us, okay, when we get intoxicated with toxins. What most people don't know is the liver has several other functions that we cannot live without. It creates bile. Bile is responsible for emulsifying or breaking down fats. And the reason why fats are so important is because we wouldn't be able to have any of the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, or K, which are essential. Okay. Also really important for breaking down the fats in our foods to get out the omega-3s. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, which means that they put out fires in our bodies, the inflammation. Okay. So it's really important for that reason. It's also really important for controlling blood sugar. Okay, so the liver specifically will actually store sugar as well too. And whenever the body gets in a position where it needs more sugar, the liver will then take it out of that storage form and then deliver that to be used as energy. Okay, also really important for balancing hormones as well too. So some people who are struggling with hormonal imbalances, both men and women, the issue could be you have a problem with your liver, or your liver is overly toxic, okay? Also really important for iron as well. It stores iron. It also creates healthy cholesterol. So at night when we're sleeping, our bodies actually manufacture cholesterol, which is hugely important because every cell in our body, 75 trillion cells in our body, and every cell has a fatty lipid bilayer on the outside of it, every cell. So without the ability to create those healthy fats, then guess what? We don't have that lipid bilayer that is supposed to be there in every cell in our body. We don't have hormones, because the backbone for most reproductive hormones like testosterone and estrogen and even vitamin D, that backbone is a healthy cholesterol that is made in your liver while you're sleeping. So the liver is hugely important, okay? Now what happens is we start to assault the liver, okay? And what I mean by that is this. We get into a point where we eat 60 to 70% of the standard American diet, again, is processed foods. And those processed foods are filled with chemicals, and those chemicals aren't able to break down in our bodies because our bodies don't recognize it. It's not made for our bodies, which means that it can't be utilized and it can't be eliminated, which means that it accumulates in the body. And the accumulation of that causes an irritation. Irritation leads to an inflammation. Inflammation leads to dysfunction, okay? When the tissues become dysfunctional, specifically we're talking about the liver, once they become dysfunctional at some point, the irritation, the inflammation will create a scarring. Once the tissue becomes scarred, it goes from what is known as fibrosis, that irritation, inflamed state, swollen state, to now it's in cirrhosis, okay? So this is how you end up with liver cirrhosis. And once the liver, the tissue itself becomes to a state where it's cirrhosis, then now you got big problems, okay? Inflammation is a problem in and of itself once it's going through that fibrosis state. But once it comes to the part of the dysfunction where it's now in cirrhosis, now you have tissue that can't be regenerated, that can't be healed. Okay, so now you're in big trouble. Okay, so really, really important we understand the function, the health of the liver is critical, to our lives. Just think about some of the things I just mentioned. It's responsible for, the storage of sugar. Okay, which means that it can lead to diabetes when we have an unhealthy liver. It's responsible for creating cholesterol and emulsifying fats in our food that we eat. Okay, which means that it can lead to high cholesterol when we don't have a healthy functioning liver. Okay, also responsible for helping to balance hormones, which means that it can lead to hormonal imbalances, everything from fibroids to PMS in women to even breast cancer and possibly in other types of cancers as well too in men. Okay, so you got to understand, you can't look at the liver just from the standpoint of this is the organ that just detoxes our body. That is not just what it does. It does so much more than that. And you have to understand, when we damage the liver, we damage a lot of our health and at the end of the day as well too. And it's so important to understand that If your liver health is in order, it means that in many ways, the way you eat is going to be in order. Your lifestyle is going to be in order, because as you'll see, I'm going to name a few things that harm the liver. You're going to see all of these things that are harming the liver means that your lifestyle is out of balance. So let's get into some of those things that harm the liver, and then we'll talk about the 8 signs that you have a toxic liver. Okay, number 1, drinking too much alcohol, as many people know, will damage the liver. This is why they say that when you drink enough alcohol, you are intoxicated. Keyword intoxicated. It means there's a lot of toxicity in the body, specifically in the liver. Okay, and the reason why that is so important is because now the liver has to figure out a way to get this out of the body. Not only the liver itself, because when you drink alcohol, it goes directly to the liver. Okay, so you become intoxicated and it damages the liver. It causes an irritation that leads to an inflammation that leads to dysfunction, especially when you're doing it consistently. So alcohol is definitely something that harms the liver. And I know that we've heard, from the powers that be that, certain alcohols are healthy for you, but I can assure you that there are better drinks to have. But I won't go into that. All right, so number 1 thing that harms the liver, alcohol. Number 2, processed foods. And the reason why I'm saying processed and not natural, and I'm also gonna call processed also foods that are heavily sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides and fungicides, okay? Because these are chemicals too, all right? So processed foods are very damaging to the liver as well. As I mentioned before, one of the primary jobs of the liver is to metabolize the food down as well too, so it helps with that as well. And one of the leading organs of metabolism is our thyroid. And one of the functions of the liver is to convert T4, which is the inactive form of thyroid hormone, to the active form. So if you have a damaged liver, then guess what? You're gonna have a damaged metabolism as well too. So this is why it's so important to stay away from those processed foods, because they damage the liver as well. Number 3, sugar. Sugar is very damaging to the liver. If you have not seen my video on fatty liver disease, please go watch it. One of the key causes of fatty liver disease is the amount of sugar that we're consuming today in our diets. And as I mentioned before in previous videos, the average American consumes around 152 pounds of sugar every year. Okay, and just to give you a comparison, in the 1800s, we consumed somewhere around 2 to 5 pounds of sugar. Okay, 2 to 5 pounds of sugar to 152 pounds of sugar. It makes an impact on our health. Okay, and I won't dive into that because that's a whole nother video that I did, so go check that out as well. But sugar is very damaging to the liver because it causes the liver to be fatty. So the cells are literally converted to fat because the fat is deposited in these cells. So the liver becomes fat in and of itself. And when it becomes fat, it becomes dysfunctional, okay? So number 3 is sugar. Number 4 is cigarettes. And I know you're thinking, cigarettes, that's the lungs, right? No, cigarettes not only damage the lungs, they also damage the liver as well. As a matter of fact, the effects of sugar are ubiquitous throughout the body. I've told a story before when I was on the stage, but when I was an undergrad and I was shadowing and thinking to become a doctor, I shadowed a surgeon, and he showed me after a surgery, he took this blood vessel, hooked it up to one end of a faucet, we'll call it a faucet, closed it off, pinched it, and then turned it on and held the other end, and you could literally see it looked like a sprinkler system because there were so many holes in the blood vessels. Okay, so it literally looked like a sprinkler system with this water coming out of everywhere. And I was like, well, is this supposed to do that? And he was like, no. And then I asked him, well, what causes that? He said cigarette smoking. So cigarette smoking literally ruins our body, but it does indeed ruin our liver as well too. All right. And then the last thing that I want to mention today, and there are many things, is anger. Okay, and this is probably one you haven't heard, but from a spiritual and emotional perspective, and as I told you guys before, on my channel, I try to talk to you about things from a holistic perspective. And what people don't understand about emotions, emotions have an impact on our health. And one of the impacts that anger has on our health is anger lives in our liver. So what you'll notice is people who are very intolerant, people who are very angry all the time, they will end up having liver problems as well too. So emotions live in our bodies. They're just not these things that we have in our minds. They actually live in our bodies, and they will damage the tissues as well. So a non-physical thing can actually damage a physical thing. So I always tell people who are struggling with their liver health, I always ask them, do they have anger problems as well too? Okay, so let's get into those 8 signs. Those 8 signs that you could have a toxic liver, and this will be a really sort of telltale sign of whether or not you have it. Now, you could have one of these, or you can have a collection of these. And having just one doesn't necessarily mean you have liver disease, but it's definitely an indication that you should probably look at your diet, look at your lifestyle, and the next time you get a checkup, maybe have your doctor look into putting in for a liver enzyme test, okay? Number 1, jaundice. Jaundice is a yellowing of the whites of the eyes, or a yellowing of the skin as well too, if it gets severe enough. Now, most people are familiar with this when it happens to babies when they're first born, but if your liver becomes damaged enough, it actually can happen to an adult as well too. All right. Number 2, ascites. Ascites is when you have this fluid buildup in the abdomen. Okay. And this is the scary part about that, is because today we see so many people with those really plump and hard bellies. I mean, especially if you reach and you touch the belly and it doesn't even move, that could be the type of ascites that is associated with liver disease, okay? So that hard, fluid-filled belly, okay? That ascites could be associated with a toxic liver, okay? Number 3, pain on the right side, okay? Pain on the right side, right below the rib cage in the upper abdomen region. If you're getting pain right there under the ribs on this upper right side, it could be an indication that you're having liver pain, because that's typically where that pain is associated. So that will also be a reason that you may need to check into it as well. Also, itchy skin, okay? If all of a sudden, for no reason, no rash, no anything, you're just itchy all over the place, that definitely could be a sign and symptom that you have a toxic liver. And what I always tell people, because I just, as you guys know, I have a 14 and 28 day detox on my website. And part of what the detox does is detoxify the liver, okay? And what people will commonly ask me while doing the detox, they'll say, hey, all of a sudden, I'm like itching, and I don't know why I'm itching. And I tell them a lot of times when the toxins are leaving the liver, and the liver is sort of removing these toxins, in the interim of going from an unhealthy liver to a healthy liver, it can become inflamed as it's removing all these toxins, okay? And so all of a sudden you get this itchy skin, and they'll notice that it'll last for a couple of hours, maybe a day, then it goes away. And not only do they not have that, pain in the upper area of their abdomen on the right side, they don't have the fluid-filled belly, because all that fluid is being retained as well. They'll notice a lot of those things start to resolve, and I'll tell them, like, it's more than likely associated with removing all those toxins from the liver, okay? Number 5, pale colored stool, okay? If your stool comes out and it looks pale, that is definitely an indication that you have some sort of liver issue going on, especially if number 6, you also have dark colored urine, okay? If your urine is very dark colored, I'm talking to you about almost tea, like the color of tea. If it gets to be that dark, that could be an indication or a sign that you have a very toxic liver, okay? So pale colored stools, okay, when you have a bowel movement, or dark colored urine could be a sign, or a combination of both, could be a sign that you have a very toxic liver, okay? And then the last one is pain or swelling in the lower legs and feet, in the ankle areas. And the reason why is, again, fluid retention, okay, as a result of having an inflamed liver, okay? And those are just 7 of the signs that you could have a very, very unhealthy liver. And then the 8th sign that you could have a very unhealthy liver is that now, as I mentioned before, you start to having hormonal imbalances, especially when you start to have estrogen dominance, okay? Because one of the things that the liver does is take the excess estrogen that is in your body that could be coming from plastics, could be coming from pesticides, that could be coming from the food you're eating, could be coming from the hormones and the meat that you're consuming or the dairy that you're consuming. Okay, these excess estrogens, okay, part of the job of the liver is to process these excess estrogens so that it can be eliminated out of the body through the stools, okay? If you have a very inflamed and unhealthy liver, it won't be able to do that. So as a result, you could have hormonal imbalances as well. So those are the 8 signs that you could have a very toxic liver. Now, again, this is not medical advice. This is me teaching you health and healing from a holistic perspective. So if you have questions, make sure you follow up with your physician so that you can take care of it as soon as possible. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button, the notification button, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace and blessings and Godspeed until the next time.